Elena Voss did not remember her life before the age of 6. Her first memory was the smell of pine trees and cold mud, and the sound of her own crying echoing through a dark forest. A hunting party from the Blackthorn pack found her that night, curled beneath a fallen tree, shaking with fever and fear. They carried her back to Castle Ashmore, where the pack healer nursed her through weeks of sickness. When she finally woke, she could not remember her name, her parents, or where she had come from. No wolf ever came looking for her. No scent match was found in the pack records. The old Alpha, kind but practical, decided the girl would be raised among the castle servants, since no family claimed her, and no one could say for certain where she belonged. She grew up scrubbing floors, folding linens, and carrying trays up long stone staircases. The other servants were not cruel to her, but they were not warm either. She was the girl from nowhere, the girl who never shifted into her wolf form, not once, in 18 years. Among wolves, that was almost worse than being human. It meant she would never rise above her station. It meant she would spend her whole life exactly where she was. Elena did not complain. She had learned early that complaining changed nothing. Instead, she worked quietly, kept her eyes down in front of the important people, and found small moments of peace where she could, watching the sunrise from the kitchen window, humming a tune she could not remember learning, tending the herb garden behind the castle walls. She never imagined her life would change, certainly not because of the Alpha King. Draven Ashmore returned to Castle Ashmore after 10 years of war against the Northern Coalition, a rival group of packs that had spent a decade trying to weaken the Ashmore bloodline and steal their territory. He came home victorious, but tired in a way that victory could not fix. His pack was fractured, his court was full of old advisors he no longer trusted, and his throne, which he had inherited far too young, felt heavier every year. There was one loss that still sat quietly in his chest, one he rarely spoke about. As a boy, he had been promised to a mate chosen by his father, a girl named Seraphine, the daughter of a neighboring pack leader. She was meant to unite two bloodlines and end a long-standing conflict. But when Seraphine was 6 years old, the caravan bringing her to Castle Ashmore was attacked at the border. The wagons were burned. No survivors were found. Draven had grown up being told he lost his future queen before he ever truly knew her face. He had grieved her in the distant way a child grieves a promise rather than a person. But some nights, when the castle was silent, he still wondered what kind of woman she might have become. Now, as Alpha King, Draven ruled with a short temper and little patience. War had taught him to expect betrayal, and peace had not yet taught him how to trust again. Servants moved quickly around him, eyes down, voices low. Everyone in the castle had learned the same lesson: do not draw his attention. Everyone except Elena. He noticed her the first week he was back, in the corner of the great hall, refilling water pitchers while he shouted at his council over a disagreement about border patrols. She did not flinch at the sound of his raised voice. She did not lower her eyes the way the others did. She simply continued her work, calm and unbothered, as though his temper was nothing more than a passing draft through an open window. It irritated him more than he expected, and it also, quietly, caught his interest. Over the following weeks, Draven found himself noticing her again and again. She never sought his attention. She never tried to impress him. When he barked an order, she followed it without fear, but also without the eager, nervous energy the other servants showed. She treated him like a person doing a difficult job, not a king to be worshipped or feared. One evening, during a tense council dinner, Elena made the mistake of correcting one of his advisors, a proud, older wolf who had just given Draven inaccurate information about grain shortages in the eastern villages. She had grown up listening at doors and remembering details others forgot. Her correction was quiet, respectful, and completely accurate. The advisor was furious. Draven, testing her, ordered her removed from her position in the main household and reassigned to the kitchens as punishment for speaking out of turn. He expected her to apologize, to beg to keep her position near the family quarters, where the work was easier and the pay slightly better. Instead, Elena simply thanked him for the opportunity to continue serving the pack in a new role and left the hall without another word. Draven sat in stunned silence long after she had gone. That night, his beta and oldest friend, Callum, found him still awake in his study, staring at nothing. "You're thinking about the servant girl," Callum said, not really asking. Draven did not deny it. "She isn't afraid of me." "Maybe she should be," Callum said, only half joking. Then his expression grew more serious. "There's something else you should know. The kitchen staff say she sleepwalks. She wanders into the east wing some nights, the sealed part of the castle, and stands outside the old nursery. They say she hums a tune, an old one from the royal bloodline, taught mother to daughter, never written down anywhere." Draven felt a strange chill settle over him. "That's not possible. No servant would know that song." "I know," Callum said quietly. "That's why I'm telling you." Draven dismissed it as coincidence at first, the kind of strange rumor that spread easily among board staff. But the thought would not leave him. 2 nights later, unable to sleep, he walked the halls of the East Wing himself, half expecting to find nothing. He found Elena standing in the doorway of the old nursery, the one that had been sealed since Seraphine's death 18 years ago. Her hand rested against the wall, exactly where a small painting of a crescent moon had once decorated the space above the crib. She was not fully awake, her eyes distant, her voice humming the same soft melody Callum had described. Draven stood frozen, watching her. Then his gaze drifted lower, to the edge of her collar, where her uniform had shifted slightly during her sleep. Just below her collarbone was a small, pale birthmark, shaped like a crescent moon. The same mark from the painting. His heart pounded as pieces he had never thought to connect began falling into place. The girl found alone in the border forest, the same year the caravan was attacked, the age that matched. The song only royal blood was taught. The mark. He did not sleep that night. The next morning, Draven called for the pack healer and Callum in complete secrecy. He could not accuse a servant girl of being his lost betrothed without proof, not without risking chaos in the pack and cruelty toward Elena if he was wrong. A blood ritual was performed quietly in a private chamber, the kind used only to confirm bloodlines in matters of succession. Elena, confused and frightened by the sudden attention, agreed only because Draven asked gently, a tone she had never heard him use before. When her blood met the ritual bowl, it glowed a soft, unmistakable gold, the color reserved for royal Ashmore bloodlines and their promised mates. The healer's hands trembled. "It's true," she whispered. "This is Seraphine." Draven felt the floor tilt beneath him. Elena, now told her real name for the first time in her memory, sat in stunned silence. She did not cry. She did not celebrate. She simply stared at her own hands, as though they belonged to someone else. "I don't understand," she finally said. "If I'm her, why did I never shift? Why did no one ever recognize me?" The healer had an answer, though it was a difficult one to hear. A binding spell, old and cruel, had been placed on the young Seraphine during the attack on her caravan, likely by the Northern Coalition raiders, who wanted the Ashmore bloodline broken beyond repair. The spell had suppressed her wolf entirely, hidden her royal scent, and left her memory clouded, ensuring she would grow up powerless and unrecognized, exactly as her enemies intended. She had not failed to shift because she was weak. She had been silenced on purpose. Draven knelt before her then, the Alpha King lowering himself in front of the servant girl he had shouted at only days earlier. "I am sorry," he said, and meant it more deeply than he had meant almost anything in years. "I am sorry for every order I gave you without knowing who you were. I am sorry the pack let you scrub floors while you carried our missing queen inside you the whole time." Elena did not know what to say. Sorry did not undo 18 years of invisibility, but something in his voice told her he understood that too. With the healer's guidance, Draven broke the binding spell himself, using an old rite that required both patience and trust. Elena knelt in the private chamber, eyes closed, as years of suppressed power slowly loosened around her like a rope finally cut free. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then her body trembled, light gathered beneath her skin, and for the first time in 18 years, Elena shifted. Her wolf was silver-coated, sharp-eyed, and unmistakably regal, even to those who had never seen a royal wolf before. Callum, standing guard at the door, actually gasped. When Elena returned to her human form, tears finally came, not from pain, but from something she could not name, relief, grief, anger, wonder, all of it at once. News spread through the castle by morning. Servants who had worked beside her for years, who had never bothered to learn much about her, now knelt in the halls as she passed. Advisors who had once dismissed her murmured apologies. The pack that had barely noticed her now treated her like she was made of something precious and fragile. Elena found the sudden reversal almost harder to bear than the years of being overlooked. She was still the same person. She still remembered every cold morning scrubbing floors, every meal eaten quietly in the kitchen after everyone else had finished, every time she had been spoken over or forgotten in a room full of people. A crown did not erase any of that. Draven understood this better than anyone expected. He did not try to rush her into accepting a coronation, and he did not assume the truth about her bloodline meant she owed him the betrothal that had been arranged for her as a child. Instead, one evening, he found her alone in the herb garden behind the castle, the same place she used to escape to as a servant. "You don't have to accept the throne," he told her honestly. "It's yours by blood, no conditions. You can take it, leave it, or decide later. No one will force you." "And the betrothal?" she asked carefully. "The one your father arranged when I was 6 years old?" Draven was quiet for a moment. "That was a promise made by two men who wanted peace between packs. It was never really a promise between us. If you want nothing to do with it, I will understand. I have no right to expect anything from you, especially not affection, just because an old agreement says I should." Elena studied him for a long moment, searching his face for the arrogance she had expected from a king, used to getting what he wanted. She found none, only a quiet honesty that surprised her. "I'm not interested in being handed a crown or a husband just because of who I was born as," she said finally. "I spent my whole life being decided for, ignored, or overlooked. If I choose this, any of it, it will be because I chose it, not because it was arranged before I could speak." "That's fair," Draven said simply. "Take whatever time you need." Over the following months, something unexpected began to grow between them, not because of bloodlines or old arrangements, but because Draven made an effort every single day to see Elena as a person, not a symbol. He asked her opinion on pack matters, and actually listened to her answers. He apologized when he was wrong, something the old Draven rarely did. He learned her small habits, the way she still preferred simple meals over elaborate feasts, the way she hummed while tending gardens, the quiet strength she carried from years of being underestimated. Slowly, carefully, Elena allowed herself to trust him, not as a king reclaiming a lost queen, but as a man willing to earn a place beside her. On the day of her coronation, Elena stood before the full pack, dressed simply, without the heavy jewels others expected of a returning queen. She spoke not as a rescued servant or a rediscovered royal, but as herself. "For 18 years, I was told I did not matter enough to be noticed," she said, her voice steady across the silent hall. "I was told my worth ended at the tasks I could complete for others. I am standing here today, not because a crown makes me valuable, but because I never stopped being myself, even when no one was watching." Draven stood beside her, not above her, exactly as he had promised months earlier. When she was formally named Luna of the Blackthorn Pack, the cheers that rose through the hall were not for a bloodline restored, but for the quiet, unshakable woman who had earned every bit of respect now being offered to her. Later that night, standing together on the castle balcony overlooking the same forest where she had once been found lost and alone, Elena finally let herself smile without guarding it. "I used to think I would spend my whole life invisible," she said softly. Draven took her hand, gently, without demand. "You were never invisible. The rest of us were simply too blind to see you." For the first time since she could remember, Elena believed that whatever came next, she would face it, not as a lost girl waiting to be found, but as a queen who had found herself.